It's great to be back in my second home here in Bedford. Got in late last night, long drive, lots of motorway traffic up the motorway after 6 days back in Tore, and there were 6 days of the best crack I had in a long time, and very busy too. I'm still shattered, and I remember one of the first stories that I ever learnt was in Torbog one night, about 1972. One of the first proper long stories that I heard, and it was from an old bogman called Jack Dunno. And Jack was an old bachelor that lived in the bog, and his auntie was married to my great-grandfather, John the Clock. So he'd great stories, and I used to be fascinated with them. And he said to me this evening, it was a breezy evening, and you could hear the wind running, blowing down the chimney. He said, just listen to that, he said. He said, put your ear closer to the fire, and you could hear this wind gushing down the chimney, and you'd be transfixed at this, because it was as if you were going into a meditation, going into a completely different world. An old cottage out in the middle of the bog, and next thing, when a big puff of smoke came out of the fire and straight into my face. Musha, don't mind that, he said. A little bit of smoke never killed anybody. But the story was, he said, your great-grandfather, he was a clockmaker, they called him John the Clock Fury. He said, and he was a very special man. And he said he gave up his clock-making business. Made quite a few pound at it. He travelled customers all around Europe. And then he made reclaimed bogland into farmland, and he had a big farm, stone cottage, and he was set to do very well for himself. But unfortunately he was pushed off his land and out of his cottage by a bigger, stronger family. He put up a brave fight for 2 years and had to bring his 9 young children into a peat hut a mile further in Ringbog. But that didn't stop him, he said, because he became an fairly important man in the community, he said, and even to the landlord Pilkington. He said the landlord Pilkington would go to him, and his best friend was a fella called Patsy Fagan, or Patsy Kelly, that was it. And they believed that time the vet had come, and wasn't Pilkington's herd of cows stopped giving milk. And the vet couldn't figure out. He said, Captain Pilkington, there's no explanation to this. They're not sick. He said, there's something is on these cattle, he said, and it's beyond me to figure it out. So then they went to Croghan, and there was a wise woman up there, and she came down and she said there's a spell been put on. She said it's something to do with witchcraft, but you'll have to sort it out yourself. She said it's beyond me. I don't deal with witchcraft. I can diagnose the problem, but you're going to have to get somebody else to sort it out. And didn't they go up for John the Clock, my great-grandfather, and Patsy Kelly, and they were masters at hunting with sticks, and they used to have these sticks about 2 to 3 foot long, with a bigger end on one, a round club on one end, and a bit like a boomerang, only it used to go vertically, spin through the air, and they used to kill hares and rabbits with this stick. And anyway, Captain Pilkington got them to go and sit up at night time and watch the hares. Now these men would be working hard all day, you know, times were very hard, and because the next thing was they'd be out till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning watching these cattle to see what was going on. And one night a hare came and got very close to one of the cows, and they didn't want to fire the stick in case they hurt the cow. But eventually she started suckling the cow, and they thought, this is not right, you know. Anyway, they waited till she moved, and Kelly let fly his stick and hit her on the hip, and the roars of her, they reckon, could be heard a mile away, and she ran. And they chased her, and they followed her the whole way to Newtown, which is about two miles in the direction of Turles Pass. Anyway, they lost her, and they went back to Towel Pilkin, Captain Pilkin, the next day what happened. And he said, I'm going to have to get you some guns and ammunition. You're going to have to shoot that one. But in the meantime, it was coming up to harvest time, and Pilkin would give my great-grandfather John the Clock and Patsy Kelly some very well-paid work to thank them for their effort. And that work consisted of bringing wagon loads of barley and corn into the distillery in Kilbeggan, 6 miles away. So because the corn was in these big sacks, and what they used to do was, Kelly and Fury would be the lead wagon. Ought to be 5, 6, maybe 10 of these wagons, and 4 horses pulling them. Wouldn't they bring a cast iron kettle and put a burning black soda turf into the kettle, and that would keep their pipes lit. They used to smoke the clay pipes. You're talking about 1870s, 1880s, this was going on, and into Kilbeggan, and it'd be around 1:30, 2 o'clock again that arrived back to Tore and unyoke the wagons, and or I think it was done for them, and they'd go to bed and they'd be up again at 6 for their day work. That's how they made the extra money to clothe their children, put boots and clothes on their feet and clothes on their back. But this particular night they were coming by Newtown. That's halfway between Kilbeggan and Turles Pass. And Kelly, for some reason, didn't the soda turf go out on Kelly and Fury's wagon, and didn't they come to a cottage in Newtown, and they could see the light on, and when the light was on in the window, that meant the person was up. And it wasn't unusual for travellers and strangers to knock at people's doors. And Kelly said to old John, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll go in there and I'll get us a light for a pipe. So he went in anyway, and he knocked at the door, and he opened the door, and there was 2 old hags sitting at the fire. God bless all here tonight, says Kelly. I won't trouble you, ladies. He said, I'm just want to get a light for my pipe. And he bent forward into the fire, and he got a sprig of heather, and just as he was lighting the pipe, didn't one of the old hags stood up, and she goes, well, curse of hell on you if it isn't Patsy Kelly from Tore, and you're the man that nearly broke my hip above in Tore a month ago. She said, and she come down with a brass poker on the side of his back and broke 2 ribs of him. Just the Rosa Kelly, they reckon, was something shocking, more from the fright. And that's who the Hare-witch was. They reckon she was turning into a hare. And to think that story, even the Captain Pilkin was in, and he, an educated man, believed in witchcraft, that it was going on. And because that was the Patsy Kelly no more would he go out at night like that. And that is a true story, honest to God, that did happen. Oh, what do you think of that, lads?